Bills fans walked into this matchup hoping for a spark, but right from the opening series, you could feel the tone shift in a way nobody wearing red, white, and blue wanted to feel. Houston's defense wasn't just good. It moved with this synchronized confidence that jumped off the screen. Every drop in a zone looked deliberate. Every leverage step was crisp. Every receiver release got squeezed like they were trying to shrink the field down to the size of a closet. It was one of those defenses that plays with a chip on its shoulder, the kind that treats every snap like a challenge they fully expect to win. You could see the pride in assignments, the conviction, the controlled aggression, and it honestly felt like watching those old-school Buffalo units that didn't rely on disguise or confusion, just straight-up execution and overwhelming discipline. And that becomes a nightmare opponent for an offense that has been searching for its own identity all season long. The Bills have been stuck in this weird limbo where the plan on paper never quite matches the product on the field. Too much hesitating, not enough dynamism, not enough consistency from the guys who are supposed to tilt matchups. And when you face a defense that thrives on punishing indecision, every small hesitation becomes a glaring problem. There were a few nicely designed throws early on, some looks that felt like they were a step away from breaking open, but close isn't good enough against a unit that barely gives you an inch. The margin for error was razor thin, and Buffalo kept stepping just outside that line. When the Bills shifted away from their scheme stuff and leaned into pure progression reads, things unraveled fast. The drop-back game looked overwhelmed, and Houston's combination of tight coverage and relentless rush kept cranking up the pressure snap after snap. And the biggest issue? The offensive tackles got taken apart. Everyone expected a heavyweight duel on the edges, two elite defenders against two solid tackles. But this one never felt like an even fight. Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins weren't losing the occasional rep. They were losing the bulk of the battle. Pressures piled up, sacks came in waves, and even understanding the shoulder issue Brown fought through. The mismatch was obvious long before he got banged up. It became clear early that Buffalo needed to adjust the protection, but the help never really came. Time after time, they lined up with only 5 blocking and expected something different to happen. That stubbornness snowballed into exactly what you would expect. More pressure, more hurried throws, more disruption. It put the quarterback in constant survival mode, forced the receivers into rush timing, and squeezed the passing game into a narrow lane of uncomfortable looks. And in a matchup like this, where your tackles are already hanging on for dear life, calling play after play without any extra protection just felt like inviting disaster. The mistakes didn't help either. A costly fumble, a tip ball interception, the kind of miscues that stall drives and swing momentum. Buffalo still had chances, real chances, to take control or at least steady themselves, but every spark fizzled right before it became fire. Even late in the game, when things tightened up and the door cracked open, finishing simply didn't happen. A fade that just needed one more toe down. A high-leverage throw that came out an inch too low. A sideline ball that felt like it was destined to be the play of the night until the defender got just enough of a hand on it. The opportunities were there, but execution kept slipping away, and this team has lived this same script too many times lately. And when the biggest moments arrived, Buffalo leaned into the same passing concepts that had become almost predictable. The mesh calls came out again, the shallow crossers rubbing underneath each other, the same route combination the league has seen them lean on year after year. But running mesh requires time. You can't fire the ball right away. You have to wait for the crossing routes to clear, which means the quarterback has to hang in there longer. So in the most critical situation of the game, with a backup tackle on the field and protection leaking from every angle, the call essentially demanded the quarterback hold the ball even more. It stretched the protection, shrank the reaction window, and forced a high-risk decision in a moment where Buffalo needed simplicity, not complexity. Some concepts can be great when everything is functioning smoothly, but this wasn't that type of game. This was the kind where the run game was quietly doing work and the looks to attack on the ground were right there. Light boxes, wide alignments, huge running lanes begging to be exploited. Every time the Bills took the ball out of the quarterback's hands and leaned into the rushing attack, it felt like a weight lifted off the offense. The numbers backed it up. The efficiency was there. The yards were there. The rhythm was there. Yet too often they drifted away from it, choosing to challenge the teeth of a defense that had no interest in bending. Even with all of this stacked against them, protection issues, missed chances, questionable calls, turnovers, and the constant pressure, Buffalo still found itself within striking distance late in the game. That's what makes it even more frustrating for fans. The moments were sitting right there. The plays were within reach. And yet again, in a season full of almost, the team couldn't grab the one that mattered. What really pulled this game into the realm of frustration was how predictable the critical moments became once you stepped back and looked at the full picture. You could sense that Buffalo was fighting uphill, not only because of the personnel issues on the offensive line, but because of how their own tendencies boxed them into corners. Every time they needed a clean, quick answer, the play call seemed to ask for patience the pocket simply couldn't afford. And every time the defense presented a soft front daring the Bills to run, the offense seemed to drift back towards something unnecessarily complicated. It was as if the rhythm of the game was speaking directly to them, offering chances to settle in, but the approach never fully aligned with the flow that was in front of them. The reality is that the run game was sitting on a silver platter for most of the night. Houston kept rolling out those light defensive boxes, almost inviting Buffalo to challenge them on the ground. And when the Bills actually did, it worked. The lanes were there, the zone concepts were clicking, and the running back was seeing the field with the kind of clarity that makes you want to keep feeding him. Every time he hit the line, something positive seemed to happen, yet for stretches at a time, the offense drifted back into the same heavily pressured passing sequences that had already proven risky. It is one thing to trust your quarterback to make a play. It is another to keep putting him in harm's way when the safer, more effective option is unfolding right in front of you. And that was the theme throughout the night. Misalignment between what the game offered and what the offense chose to do. Instead of leaning into the strength of the moment, Buffalo tried to force something that wasn't there. The protection was crumbling, the receivers weren't consistently separating, and the quarterback was being made to stand in the fire over and over. Whenever a clean picture emerged pre-snap, it often evaporated in an instant because defenders were driving down on routes, reading the quarterback's eyes, and reacting before the ball ever left his hand. And even when a window appeared, it didn't stay open long enough. Every missed opportunity piled on top of the last, creating this growing sense that the Bills had to be perfect to score, while Houston didn't have to take nearly as many risks. What made it more painful was the number of little moments that were inches away from changing everything. The near first down throw where the rusher got just enough of a hand on the ball. The sideline fade where one more inch of space would have meant a touchdown or at least a fresh set of downs. The late throw that sailed a hair too low. Each one of those sequences felt like a turning point waiting to happen, but the spark never caught. It was as if Buffalo kept reaching for the light switch and finding the wall instead. The intentions were right. The execution just wouldn't cooperate. But it wasn't only about the offense. The defense had its own roller coaster to ride. They came out sluggish, unable to match Houston's tempo or energy early on. Missed fits, soft edges, delayed reactions. The first half looked nothing like the unit that showed up later. By the time they settled in during the second half, locking down the run and tightening coverage, the early damage had already shaped the narrative. The comeback attempt depended on being airtight, and while the defense gave them every chance to climb back in, the offense couldn't capitalize. For as strong as the adjustments were, it's hard to ignore how vital those early missteps became once the score tightened. Even in that rough opening, the defense eventually found a rhythm. The second half looked like a completely different team. They were flying downhill faster, shedding blocks with more force, and refusing to let Houston sustain the same kind of drives they built early. It was the kind of turnaround that should have set the stage for a late rally. And in many ways, it did. The opportunities were absolutely there. All the Bills needed was one extended drive, one breakout play, one moment of execution to tilt everything back in their favor. The defense delivered their part of the bargain by giving the offense repeated chances. But every chance ended in the same place. One small mistake, one missed detail, one breakdown. And when you start going through the snap counts, the picture becomes even clearer. There were players gutting it out through injuries, fighting way above their physical comfort level, but the drop-off was obvious. The offense had bodies cycling in and out, while the key playmakers stayed on the field almost constantly. The commitment was there, the effort was unquestioned, but the chemistry and rhythm were off just enough to matter. The receiving group had flashes of brilliance, especially on certain sideline routes where precision and timing lined up perfectly, but the inconsistency after the catch and the inability to win clean early in routes kept slowing drives before they even had a chance to spark. The tight end group played a massive role in the snap distribution too, and that made it even more surprising that the passing plan didn't lean more heavily into quick-hitting concepts that targeted the middle. With so much pressure attacking from the edges, the middle of the field should have been a more frequent release valve. Instead, the passing game kept drifting into longer developing patterns that required a level of protection the offensive line simply didn't have in them that night. It wasn't a lack of effort. It was a lack of alignment between strategy and situation. Even the personnel usage spoke volumes. When a tackle is clearly limited physically, still fighting, but visibly compromised, it becomes tough to justify leaving him isolated over and over. The pride in wanting to battle for your team is admirable, and fans will always respect that level of toughness. But the coaching staff has to recognize when a matchup becomes impossible. Playing through pain is one thing. Try to contain elite edge rushers without full use of an arm is another. The ripple effect was obvious. Pressure collapsed pockets early, forced the quarterback off his platform, and disrupted timing before routes even had a chance to develop. And just like that, the rhythm of the game, the real rhythm, not the one on the play sheet, slipped through Buffalo's fingers. You could see the frustration growing with every stalled possession, every drive that started with promise and ended with a scramble, a hit, or a throwaway. The crowd watching at home could feel it too, that tension of a game that was always within reach but never truly under control. It wasn't a blowout. It wasn't a mismatch. It was a winnable game that kept whispering, "Here it is, take it," and Buffalo just couldn't close their hand around it. Even the flashes of brilliance, like that wild lateral play that will be remembered purely for athletic creativity, got swallowed up by the outcome. Those moments become footnotes instead of headlines when the result doesn't go your way. Fans will look back and remember how close the team came, how many windows cracked open, how many sequences begged to be capitalized on. The story of the night wasn't lack of opportunity. It was the inability to turn those opportunities into points when they mattered most. And as the game drifted into its final minutes, with the tension building and the stakes rising, the Bills found themselves in that familiar territory, needing one final execution, one final surge, one final moment of clarity. But when the play came, it unraveled the same way so many earlier plays had. Pressure arrived too fast. The window closed too quickly, and the ball ended up in the wrong set of hands. The defense's late surge couldn't erase the early breakdowns, and the offense's flashes couldn't replace the consistency they needed to finish. Before we dive back in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest Buffalo Bills updates straight to your screen. And hey, don't hold back. Let us know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments. Whispers are swirling through the NFL world as reports emerge that Sean McDermott, head coach of the Buffalo Bills, has been abruptly dismissed amid what insiders are calling a major internal scandal. Sources close to the organization suggest tensions have been simmering behind the scenes for weeks, but no one expected such a dramatic shakeup. The team's owner, Terry PEGULA, reportedly exploded in fury over the developments, leaving the locker room in stunned silence. According to unconfirmed reports, the situation involved disputes between McDermott and key members of the front office, as well as friction with several players. While the exact details remain murky, insiders hint at a breakdown in trust and communication that reached a tipping point. It was like a powder keg waiting to go off, one anonymous source said. PEGULA, known for his hands-on approach and fiery temper, apparently reached the end of his patience, prompting an immediate decision that has left fans and analysts alike scrambling for answers. The timing of this move has raised eyebrows across the league. The Bills have been competitive under McDermott's leadership, and his tenure was generally regarded as steadying and disciplined. Yet, behind the polished public image, tension seems to have festered to a point where the relationship between coach and ownership was irreparable. Some insiders speculate that this is only the tip of the iceberg, suggesting further personnel changes could be on the horizon. Fans are left in shock, and social media is ablaze with speculation. Who will step into the leadership vacuum? Will the team pivot towards a more aggressive coaching style? Or will a familiar face be elevated to stabilize the roster? Analysts are already debating whether this move signals a new direction for the franchise or a reaction to internal unrest that has quietly undermined team cohesion for months. As the dust settles, one thing is clear. The Bills organization has entered uncharted territory. The McDermott era, which many believed would define Buffalo football for years, has ended in controversy and abrupt upheaval. For now, insiders say the locker room remains tense, the front office on high alert, and PEGULA's fury continues to reverberate through the halls of the team's headquarters. The NFL world watches closely, knowing that the ripple effects of this scandal could reshape not just the Bills, but the entire league. That's a wrap for now. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay on top of all things Buffalo Bills, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments. See you in the next update.